Hello, and thanks for joining us for Prepped and Polished Education and Inspiration. I'm your host, Alexis Avila, educator, online entrepreneur, and founder of tutoring and test prep firm Prepped and Polished, broadcasting today from beautiful South Natick, Massachusetts. Prepped and Polished Education and Inspiration is your destination for groundbreaking insight from today's most influential educators, leaders, and minds on the planet. Get to know the Prepped and Polished community. You can find us on Facebook at Prepped and Polished, as well as on Twitter at Prep Polished. Thank you for everyone tuning in. Joining our show today is Dean Jacobs. Dean's a traveler, photographer, author, and speaker at deanjacobs.org. Dean is based out of Fremont, Nebraska. Dean graduated from Wayne State College with a degree in biology and minor in earth science and art. He worked in pharmaceuticals for about 10 years and completely changed his career path to pursue his dreams. Since 2001, Dean's traveled to over 50 countries, documenting his journey through writing, photography, and speaking. And his goal is to share his traveling adventures, bridge cultures, inspire hope. We're grateful to have Dean on our show. He's going to share with us his traveling adventures and insights. To our listeners, you can submit a question at any time, radio@preppedandpolished.com. And we always appreciate hearing from you. And Dean, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Really good, Alexis. And I really appreciate you having me on your show. We're going to have some fun today.
So I always start with like a fun question, but what's the best part for you about life in Nebraska?
Well, that's a brilliant question. Well, this is where I grew up, so this is where home is. This is where home base I keep coming back to. And I lived in Seattle, Washington for 7 years. I lived in San Diego for 3. And part of the reason why it keeps bringing me back here is I help my brother take care of our mom who needs some extra help these days. So I'm doing my part to, make sure that she has a good quality of life at this stage of her journey. And one of the great things about being here is Nebraska is a place where there's more cows than people. So, if you like having rural settings and quiet and an opportunity to know who your neighbors are and that kind of thing, Nebraska offers that.
Fantastic. So, Dean, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started.
Well, you mentioned a little bit, Alexis, in the introduction. I was 10 years in the corporate world and doing really well. And at some point, I started doing some soul searching, started asking myself, how much stuff does one really need to be happy? I mean, how many cell phones, how many televisions, how many cars, how much stuff, And when I got serious on answering that question, the next thing that came to my heart was, well, Dean, what do you dream about? And I don't know about a lot of people, but I didn't dream help increasing the pharmaceutical companies' profits by 0.00001%, because that's the reality of what we're talking about. My dream was to go be engaged and experience the world in my own way, in my own terms, in my own manner. So I quit my job, sold my house, did that thing that a lot of people, I should say, think about, dream about, but never quite do. And I stepped off the cliff, and instead of falling, and I have my moments where I fall down, but instead of falling all the way down, I grew a pair of wings, and away I went. And I've never looked back. And that first trip lasted for 2 years, where I traveled through 28 countries living on $10 to $15 a day. That gave me, now there are 2 reasons I did that. Number one, I'm not a trust fund baby, okay? And, and I worked really hard for 10 years. I saved 15%. I'm from Nebraska. We have common sense. I'm not talking about doing something irresponsible like going into major debt just to do this. No, it's about being accountable and responsible, but also staying true to who you are kind of thing. So my budget for my first trip around the world was $10 to $15 a day. And the reason I had it set for that was back in 2001. The dollar was a lot stronger back then. But more importantly, I knew that a tiny budget would put me in contact with the ordinary, everyday people. And that's where the richness of a journey. I mean, I've climbed on the steps of the Taj Mahal, climbed the Great Wall of China, slept underneath the stars, the outback of Australia, been to the base camp of Mount Everest, been to the heart of Africa, and far as you can see, it's nothing but zebras and wildebeest, etc. But the richest part of a journey is the opportunity to sit down, break bread, have a cup of tea with someone that's different color skin, speaks a different language, maybe worships a different God than what you do. That gives you such a great opportunity to learn about the world. And more importantly, to also learn about yourself, because it pulls you out of your comfort zone and into parts of yourself that otherwise remain dormant until those situations call it forth.
Wow. Dean, who were your influences growing up? Just trying to...
Good question. Influences growing up. I was kind of a independent, quiet kid growing up. Sometimes the kids ask me, Alex, how was I when I started traveling? Well, the answer to that, I was 9 years old. One Saturday morning, I got up on my bicycle. It was a Stingray bicycle. You know what those are? You know, those Stingray high, the high handlebars and the banana seat. I got up one Saturday morning when I was 9, drove it all the way, rode it, or pedaled all the way to the town next door. I mean, it's not a suburb. It's like 10 miles down the road, down gravel roads, looked at the Elkhorn River, and then pedaled all the way back. So whatever that curiosity that's in me that I think naturally occurs in all people was there already. And then I got in the work world, and it got covered over. But you asked me who my influence was. It was my own curiosity, my own heart. And then I'm kind of an independent dude in that regard. So I love interacting with people. I also love my quiet time alone. Now, I had some pretty big influencers when I went to college. In particular, with some college professors that saw whatever this was in me. And one of them gave me the encouragement. His name is Dr. Paul Campbell. He goes, why don't you go backpack to Europe for a couple of months before you graduate, before you really get off into the work world? And that was the first time that I had been abroad. And I went to Europe the first time that I left the U.S. and backpacked for 2 months and saw the Eiffel Tower and, saw those things that people, see in movies and television and things like that. I was there during Pamplona and the running of the bulls. Do you know that?
I do. I never experienced it, but I know it.
Yeah, well, I did it.
You did it.
And I ran with the bulls and, did these things that I thought I would never get access to. Because, number one, Nebraska is a long way from everywhere, right? And I was 21 before I ever even saw salt water or any kind of, ocean kind of body kind of thing. I mean, we're way out here. But, and having grown up, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, so it just took a while to get to the point where I could start to have the freedom or the courage to really start to go explore beyond what, here in the Midwest. So, you asked me who's the influence, some college professors. That was the beginning.
Gotcha.
So they planted some seeds in me. And that once I did that one timer, I got hooked. I got hooked really bad. Not bad, in a beautiful way. I mean, look, every day when you travel, every day you wake up, you see something new that you've never seen before, most likely you'll never see again. That's so rich to learn and grow. It's something I discovered about myself in that process is that I am at my best when I am surrounded by the unfamiliar.
Wow.
Because it's so rich. It's such an opportunity to discover something new about the world and by yourself. About yourself. So I love being at the mercy of the world. I really do.
When you were traveling, did you think to yourself, I'm going to go back to the States and, create deanjacobs.org and teach and educate my adventures? Or did this just happen naturally?
That's a great question. The answer is no. I didn't go with the intention that I would turn this whole life experience in perspective into teachable moments. No, I really went because it was my dream. I mean, I was making over $100,000 a year working for this pharmaceutical company, and growing up poor, that was huge money. Now, that was 10 years ago, and that's still huge money even now. And but I was on that hamster wheel of life, working really hard and really fast, and I had everything you were supposed to have. I had a beautiful girlfriend and a huge house, and there was just more. There was something else that was wanting to happen. And it took me several years to of digging and asking and being honest with myself, because I convinced myself pretty well that having all this stuff was really what was going to make me happy, and I had it all, and that wasn't it. There was something else. So then I had to dig some more, and that's when those old dreams started to come back. 'Cause I got in the work world, forgot my dream, and then those dreams came back to, thankfully, those dreams came back to the surface. And you ever been hungry and not even your favorite food sounds good to you? That's what my life was like. I had everything that I wanted, but not even, the only thing that sounded right was to take this trip. And that was my job, to find the courage to say yes to that internal pull that was going in my heart. If I would have ignored it, I'll never forget this. If I would have ignored it, you might as well put me 6 foot under now, because it was so clear to me. And I've interviewed rebel generals in the Congo now since that point in time, lived with mountain gorillas, done all kinds of amazing things, backpacked across Syria, the Middle East. But the bravest thing I've ever done was the day that I called up the company and said, I'm leaving, because everything I knew my life to be just went spinning off without me. And then I was left with this blank canvas to be the author of my life, not somebody else's idea what that should be, but me as the author. And there's a certain fulfillment that can only come from when you're staying true to who you are and what you were made to do.
What was the most fascinating country you visited, and the country that made the biggest impression on you?
Oh, brilliant. That's such a hard question. A lot of them made, lots of countries touched my heart and since authentic and real ways. So I don't have a favorite place. But there are places I want to go back and spend some more time, because I was touched so deeply. Indonesia, Nepal, India, Ethiopia, Sudan. Some people are like, why do you want to go to Sudan? Well, part of it, right? That's the list I just listed off there. It's not like on anybody's top 10 list, most likely, of where they want to go backpack or explore, or but all those places have very distinct cultures. And I found them all to be very generous and very kind. For example, I'm always on public transport, because that's what my budget framework puts me in, that kind of situation. And several times I get ready to pay for my bus fare in Sudan, and somebody taps me on the shoulder and gives me a big smile, and he goes, I already paid for you. And I would look at them and I go, thank you. And why? Why did you do that? And they just give me another big smile and said, well, you're a guest in our country. It's our responsibility a little bit to watch over you while you're here. Now, do we ever hear about those kinds of things? No. All we ever hear, Alexis, is the worst stuff of a place, right? And I think that messes our reality up and makes us afraid of the world versus to be engaged in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess, you probably have a short answer for this one, but were there any countries that you didn't like?
I wasn't a big fan of the UAE. Okay. United Arab Emirates. And I just come from India, and I was on my way to Turkey via UAE. And I just, after being in India, I don't know, have you ever been to India? I mean, it's an experience in it. Not yet, anyway, huh? And it's an experience in itself. And then I went to UAE, and it was also this big modern city, and people just weren't friendly. And I was just disappointed, because in India, I was engaged with, there's a billion people, so you're going to be engaged with humanity in a big way there. And I landed in that really wealthy country. I just felt the walls come back up on people. Or not come back up. I just felt the walls were already up. And I just don't feel like it's necessary. And I find it boring, actually, that people walk around with walls, because we lose out on an opportunity to have an experience of life, which, the best experiences of life are when we have interaction with humanity. It's never going to come from stuff. I really talk to the kids about that. One of the biggest lessons I learned was this: people who have nothing were always trying to give me everything in a way of kindness and dignity and respect. That's because happiness doesn't come from the accumulation of stuff. It comes from how we treat each other. And when I'm doing my presentations, I talk about that a lot.
I noticed from your website and your videos, you do a lot of speaking to kids in classrooms. And those kids, I don't know what you do to them, but you put some spell and they're all like kind of standing up together. And like, what are you telling? What are you telling these kids?
I'm telling them like the stories that I just told you, like in Sudan and things like that. I give them a different view of the world than what they see on the television or what they read in the newspapers. One that has them be touched and inspired and curious and engaged with the world versus afraid of the world. Because I just don't think that serves us in creating a healthy community, telling everyone that they need to be afraid of everything. I just don't think we're going to find the solutions to the challenges that are coming down now and in the future by creating a wall of fear. I think that we're going to find we want to empower our young people in particular because they have a challenging future coming down the pike, right? And even now today, I got an email here a couple of months ago on Facebook. You know how Facebook has changed the world and makes us more accessible than we've ever been. This Facebook email, this young man wrote to me. He goes, "I remember listening to you in 6th grade." I looked at his age on his Facebook, and that was like 6-7 years ago. He goes, "I remember going home that day feeling like anything was possible." And don't we want our kids going home from school feeling like anything is possible? Because it's going to be from that place that they find the answers to the challenges that are coming their way. Not just mentally, but also they got to feel like it's possible. Otherwise, we're going to slip into resignation and cynicism, and we're just going to throw up our hands and give up. And there are forces at work that really want us to go down that path, and I'm not just willing to sit down and watch it happen.
When you look at others, they don't. You made the transition. You made the leap. A lot of people don't make the leap. What do you think's preventing them from making that leap?
That's a brilliant question. That's a hard question to ask. I mean, the easy answer, they got some aspect of fear going on, and it may be clouded enough where they really don't know what they want, so they can't take that step forward, or the people around them that they surrounded themselves are constantly telling them that they can't do it, even if they wanted to do it anyway, and things like that. It takes a lot of courage, I have to say, and a lot of internal strength to be able to let go of everything you've ever known and that sense of security, and even though that's false security, because the stock market, or it could just be all gone tomorrow and we got to start all over again, to walk away from everything that to step into what's possible. But we don't have people talking about what's possible. All we got people do is talking about what are you going to lose? What you should be afraid of? Does anyone ever talk about what's possible? Hardly. Hardly. I mean, when's the last time you saw a headline in a newspaper or in CNN? This is possible. Huh?
That's right? What I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, the only time it kind of comes up, and that's in political speeches, and then that even gets smashed by the opponents who want to belittle what's possible kind of thing. So I just want to serve as a reminder and as an example that we live in life is a gift, and it's our responsibility to run with it with the best we can with the small window of time we've been given, and to sit back and using fear to stop us from really having that sense of fulfillment and joy and peace that can only come from being engaged in life and staying true to your heart. That's a great loss. And if there's your listeners who are listening to this, like, I'm an ordinary guy from Nebraska, buddy. I am. I'm a C student from college. My dad was a truck driver. I don't come from any pedigree or financial windfall from a trust fund. No, I'm just a guy who refused to let go of his dreams. And so I live my life by example. And not only do I educate the kids about the world, about what's there, the historical things I encountered and the cultures, but more importantly, I stand in front of them and declare to them that dreams are not reserved for the most wealthy, the most beautiful, the most talented. They are the birthright of all humanity. And I'm a living example of that. And then I challenge them to be engaged and to look in their own hearts and say, what are your dreams? really. Give yourself permission to flip that switch and to be engaged in your mind, using your imagination and using your heart to see what's possible for you. Because no one can predict what's possible for us.
Dean, do you still do quite a bit of traveling?
Yes. I mean, it's in my DNA, it seems to be. This April, I will be going back to the Amazon rainforest. I have a service learning project that I'm working on where I'm taking educational materials to remote indigenous villages deep in the Amazon rainforest of Ecuador. We're talking about saving the rainforest, right? Well, let's empower the people that live there. One of the ways we can do that is to give them some support on what they ask. And I've created a relationship with the Achuar in particular, and they're asking for some educational materials, so that's what I bring them. And when I'm there, they teach me about the rainforest. The people who knows the rainforest better than the people who have lived there their whole life, right? You know, so I walk through the forest with my camera and my video gear, and the kids teach me through a translator because I don't speak their language. All right, they teach me about the rainforest, and eventually that will be educational materials that will be available. Having indigenous people, kids teaching our kids about the rainforest. How cool is that?
Amazing. We need you here. Come to Boston.
Hey, you know what? If you got schools in your listening audience, or PTA presidents, or
right.
librarians, because I've authored 2 books. I have a book about my first trip around the world that lasted 2 years. That's called Wondrous Journey. My second book is called Wondrous Creatures. Those are animals that I have accumulated photographs from all over the world. That won an international award here about a year and a half ago. It's a great book, and now that's in the process of being turned into an ebook. So, I mean, I fulfill a lot of educational objectives.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm finally starting to get smart enough to request from the teachers. They're beginning, when I go visit a school, they start to write me long lists of all the core standards that I hit in my visit. I mean, I don't know what they are because I don't swim in that arena every day like that. I just go out and I teach and share the experiences of being engaged and exploring over 52 countries around the world. So when I'm standing in front of those beautiful big hearts and open minds, they look at me and they see the world because I'm right there. I'm alive. I'm not talking about a concept. I'm not talking about something I read. I'm talking about what did it smell like to be at the base camp of Mount Everest? What did it feel like? How was I feeling when I watched the sun change colors on the face of Mount Everest? Or watched the shadows move across the pyramids of Egypt? I climbed inside the pyramids. I sailed down the Nile. All of a sudden, the world doesn't become some remote concept. It's a real place because here's a real guy who's touched it, who's smelled it, who's heard it, who's felt it, who's fallen in love with it, and who's willing to share it in a way that is accessible for them.
Dean, if we go to deanjacobs.org, can we see your photography, your books, some speaking that you've done?
Yeah, deanjacobs.org has all my materials on there. It has downloadable brochures. So if there's a parent or somebody like that in our audience who wants to say, hey, I want to check about having this guy, well, they can download a PDF from my website. My photos are on there. I got videos of me presenting to kids on there. When I do travel, I do write a weekly newspaper column, and some of that information's on there. Then I'm a trained photographer, so you'll see lots of cool photos. I'm a self-trained photographer. Let me rephrase that. I'm a self-taught photographer. And just like anything, you work on it long enough, you develop that skill, and there's some pretty nice photos on there.
What are some cool schools that you visited in different cities all over the world, all over the States, or
all over the U.S. I got some schools in Germany. Matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going to Connecticut. Where am I going in Connecticut? Oh boy, I'm not very good with the East Coast. Just like East Coasters are not good with the Midwest kind of things. But
I'll give you some cities. We got Hartford. We got Westport.
South Norwalk.
Okay.
It's like a suburb of New York, they tell me, or something like that. So anyway, I'm flying into Westchester, the Westchester Airfield, and they're going to come get me. And I'm presenting all day Wednesday in some schools there. And then I do New Mexico, Washington State, North Carolina, Texas, Iowa. There are people that will hear me and say, you know what? I want my kids to have this, or my child. I want them to be exposed to this kind of attitude, this kind of passion, this kind of view of the world, one that has them to be engaged. And there will be teachers that will hear this, or principals, or school officials, or whatever, and say, you know what? This is the kind of environment that we are committed to creating in our school. And I hold the school like a sacred place, because that's where parents drop off their precious, the things that they love the most, and they trust them to be taken care of. And that's how I hold it in my heart, and that's how I spend a day from holding it in that space when I'm in those doors.
Dean, if someone not familiar with you and your work, what's the best place to get in contact with you?
Oh, well, a good place to start, of course, is my website, because there's a ton of information, of good information. There's teaching materials on there. I try to make it a resource for people who want to teach their kids about the world. So that's deanjacobs.org. Another way to find me, of course, my contact information is all on there. My phone number is on there. My mailing address is on there. I try to make myself very available. So email is really the best way to track me down, because like in April, I'm heading to South America for a month and a half. I'm taking more school materials in the Amazon rainforest. I'll be learning more about the rainforest. So then I fall off the grid, and I always set my emails and stuff up so people know that I haven't disappeared from the world. I'm just out and exploring it.
Amazing. Practice what you preach.
You bet, man. How else can you stand in front of 500 kids in a gym? Because this is usually how it works. I do an assembly in the gym, and then I do writing workshops with the kids throughout the rest of the day, so I can help the schools meet as many educational objectives as I can with a visit. So I'll do assembly, and then the rest of the day gets filled up with a writing workshop. But how else can you stand in 500 or 700 kids and not? You have to be authentic. If you're not, you're done in an instant. But I've never had a problem, because what you see is what you get, and everything is real and accessible to these guys. A lot of times I'll get an email from a parent after I visit a school, and it'll go something like this: Mr. Jacobs, usually when Bobby comes home from the school, he doesn't say too much. But this day, he wouldn't stop talking about all the things you talked about. Well, isn't that cool? That means we got a kid that's all fired up about learning and growing. And even better than that, that in itself is a win. Then he goes home, and that opens up a whole new possible conversation with his mom and dad about what he learned, and a chance for exchange. And one of those moments, how priceless is that? So what that does is it has a ripple effect of not only like creating an engaged and energized and healthy learning environment in the school, it carries over into the home. Well, that's a cool thing, because that's a step in the right direction of having a healthy community. Not just a community, but a healthy community. And it's going to be a healthy community, that we have a world that works.
Wow. Really inspiring.
Thanks, man.
Well, thank you, Dean. We really appreciate you coming on. You are the epitome of inspiration, and
Well, hey, I appreciate your interest, really, and an opportunity to share with what I do with someone who gets it is just, is a gift for me. So, so thank you to you and your listeners, and I hope our paths cross one day. Would love to sit down or find visit a school, or a school has me in, and if I do come that part of the world and somebody's there, make sure you come and hear me that day, or we'll have coffee or something, or anything, just to connect for a moment in time. Okay?
Oh, that sounds awesome. Would love that. Okay, well, this wraps up our show today with Dean Jacobs, traveler, photographer, author, and speaker. Please visit Dean's website. It is chock full of information. deanjacobs.org to learn more about Dean and his extraordinary work. Thank you for joining us on Prepped and Polished Education and Inspiration.